Today we have a special guest expert all about hormone health. Hi, I'm Jessica Ballant, a physical therapist and Pilates teacher, and I want to bring science-based knowledge, empathy, courage, support, love, and hopefully some fun to the journeys we have with our bodies. There is hope and strength in your body, and my goal is to help you find it. Hey everybody, welcome back to Meet Your Body. I am so excited about today's episode, and we are just going to dive right into the interview, but I want to give you a little bit of introduction about Ali. So our guest expert today is Ali Damron, and from a personal note, Ali is who I worked with over 4 years ago now when I started looking into getting my hormone health in order. It was after my hysterectomy. I really knew I needed a baseline on what was going on with my hormones. And so Ali is who I worked with personally. And since then, we've become colleagues. We continue to work together. So I know you are in for such a treat today. We are going to dive into so many details around hormone health. And then also keep in mind, Ali is coming into my Unlimited community May 2024 for a really deep dive into this, even more than we covered today, and she'll answer all member questions there. So I'll have the link below if you're interested in Unlimited and you want that deeper dive. Definitely join us for May 2024. Otherwise, I'll have all the links to find Ali in all the places as well. But let me give you a little introduction to Ali Damron. So Ali is a wife and a mother to 2 sweet little boys, as well as a hormone expert, licensed acupuncturist, and a certified personal trainer. She has a virtual practice where she helps women all over balance their hormones and have better moods, sleep, periods, and energy levels. She works one-on-one with patients, has digital courses, a podcast called The Ali Damron Show, and a YouTube channel. So please, please, please enjoy this expert interview. I learned so much. We could have talked for hours. I had so many more questions to ask, but definitely you will learn so much from today and hopefully feel more empowered and encouraged all about hormone health when you're done listening. So without further ado, here is my interview with Ali Damron. Thanks, everyone, like I said, for being here today. You heard my introduction. I am so thrilled to have Ali here today. Thanks for being here, Ali.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and for those of you, for some context, Ali and I have known each other just virtually. I think probably three or 4 years, I feel like now.
Yeah.
And she was actually the one I first sought out. She was recommended to me when I wanted to start diving into my hormones a little after my hysterectomy. And I knew I needed some testing. And so I am bringing you the person that I personally have worked with. So I'm so excited. You guys have all heard me talk about her and the testing I've done. So let's start just with an introduction. Why don't you tell everybody whatever you want them to know about you, work, life, your story, everything.
Totally. Yeah. So I am by trade an acupuncturist, and it's a little confusing because around 2017, I started transitioning to online space with digital courses and virtual work. And then when the pandemic hit, actually, we got shut down for a little while and my schedule filled. And so I've actually never gone back to my in-person practice. And so I just work 100% virtually with women all over the country and do things like periods and mood, sleep, energy, digestion, hot flashes, just kind of teaching the transition from perimenopause into menopause and longevity, healthy aging, acne and skin. I really love to help women with the laundry list of things that we feel like start to pop up, and they feel subtle, right? Like it doesn't just, generally speaking, happen overnight. We start to notice like, oh, my sleep doesn't feel great, or I feel a little hotter, or my periods are changing, or, whatever, anxiety and mental health. And we don't really know what to do about it. We might go to our doctor and say, well, I'm feeling anxious. They could give you a medication for that, or I'm hot, or my periods are weird, I need birth control or whatever, but it doesn't always solve all the issues, right? So then we're still dealing with some of the other stuff. And so I really enjoy talking to women about their lifestyle, their symptoms, their medical history, and just getting a really, really great holistic picture of what's going on and chatting through lifestyle and nutrition and sleep and exercise and what supplements, vitamins, and herbs would be good for them. Because I also think that too, like, marketing is wonderful. And on social media, the supplements, like, even to this day, sometimes I get targeted ads for them all day, every day. And I'm like, wow, that looks like a miracle drug. And in my experience, there's no supplement that's going to be a magic pill necessarily, but there are certain things that can be really helpful in correcting imbalances and supporting our body despite what we're going through. If it's injury, illness, stress, perimenopause in general, which is kind of just known as a hormonal imbalance, we can just kind of holistically get you feeling better from a root and support your body so that all of those symptoms tend to dissipate or fade.
Yep. Yep. And I love what you said about the subtlety of it too, because I remember when we first talked. So those of you who have kind of listened and heard, I think I started perimenopause about 18 months ago. I'm 46 now. So that's what I think from, yes, these symptoms. But I remember when we were talking after my hysterectomy, so it's 2020, and you were asking, same, like, why are you here? What are your symptoms? What are you experiencing? And you're like, are you fatigued? And I said, yeah, but also it's 2020. I have 2 young kids home. Of course I'm fatigued. Do you have headaches? Yes, of course I have headaches. And it was really, I haven't forgotten that, because same when I work with women or just anyone really, what are our symptoms coming from? Are they from stress? Are they from an injury? Are they actually just from my period? I don't know. And then how does that layer? And I think that's so important to realize. You can start to have your eyes open to how you're feeling, and you need to be a problem solver. You kind of have to take your emotion out of it for a little bit and just really write it down, right? Like, what am I feeling and when am I feeling it? But then to have someone, an expert, be able to come in and say, you know what, let's peel back these layers, because yes, you're stressed, which yes, is probably going to make these symptoms worse.
Mm-hmm.
And also, is that the only cause? Is it that, like, usually it is layer upon layer. It's not usually just one thing. So to have someone be able to help, let's peel back each layer one at a time and work on that. And then we'll move to the next piece and the next piece. And that was really helpful to me. We want that silver bullet. Like, we want, like you said, that one pill or that one thing to take care of it all. But it's just not the way it really works most of the time.
Totally. And I think, even like women in our late 30s, 40s, 50s, like we're complex, right? We've had the complexities of societal conditioning. And I also, perimenopause tends to be the era of responsibility for us. A lot of us went through the pandemic and not, just a more stressful transitionary type of way. And so there is a lot of layers to it. And I do think that sometimes when I ask patients, like, about digestion or like their period or sleep or something, they're like, oh yeah, I guess I do feel that way. And I always just like didn't even think about it.
Right.
But it can be like a part of some other picture that you're experiencing. And you're thinking that, I get people all the time that are like, well, I have like all of these things and I just feel like I'm falling apart. But I'm like, oh no, like they're all just part of this, like 1 to 2, 3 things that if we just peel back those layers, like you said, we can help everything.
Yes. And I feel like just giving women that power of, this is common. No, it's not normal. Like, because a lot of times we'll say, oh, I'm tired all the time. It's normal. Oh, you're a mom. Or, oh, this. Oh, you're stressed. It's just normal. So we really feel like we just have to deal with it. It's normal that I leak all the time. It's normal I get up 3 times a night. It's normal I can't sleep, that I'm tired, that I have headaches, that I'm bloated. And then we put the pressure on ourselves of, I just need to work out more and I just need to cut my calories. I'm just not doing good enough. And it's this cycle. And if we can just have one little break in it to say, wait a minute, first, let's validate what you're feeling.
Totally.
It is crazy. All these things, come on, you're not falling apart. This is a part of the human experience. Hormones are a beautiful thing. They allow us to live and function. So let's navigate together our way through this, but just understanding for myself, oh, this is normal. This is actually part of what my body does. And also there are things I can do to feel better. And that has been really empowering for me. It doesn't mean, again, overnight I feel better. It's that, oh, I can take some control back during a time that feels really isolating and out of control.
Totally. And I think, even just something that you said, like, I really do think that, and we can talk about the physiology of this, but when
Yes.
women just feel validated and heard, like that in itself is so healing.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do feel like, oh my gosh, there is something going on. A lot of times, unfortunately, we're sort of like gaslit in either like there's nothing wrong or it's normal to your point, or you just have to deal with it. It's perimenopause, you're a mom, you're postpartum, like whatever. And you're just like sitting there and you're like, wow, this is like just what I have to deal with every day.
Yep.
And then I do think, I'm a mom, you're a mom, you're a business owner, like that. When you don't feel good, that makes those things so much harder,
Yeah.
and they're already hard.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I just think like validating women makes them feel safe, which
Yep.
our brain feeling safe is imperative for healing. Our brain cannot feel scared and in danger if we want our hormones to heal.
Yes. And this is so important. And if you guys wonder about that, go back. One of my first podcast episodes is all about that, feeling safe, why it's so important to feel safe. That is so huge.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, one other piece that really helped and why I'm so glad we're talking about it, and I know on your Instagram you bring this message out all the time, is making sure women don't feel alone. Because I remember just being so confused about, I don't even think I had put a label on it yet. I was just, for me, it was my eyes. Suddenly they were changing, all these changes. And I was with just some mom friends because our girls were running around and we're all in our mid 40s. And someone said something and I kind of peeked up and said, wait, what? Your eyes and this? And everyone started saying, oh yeah, perimenopause, or oh yeah, I missed last month's cycle. And just hearing that, I left with the biggest smile on my face because I said, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. We can smile about it and laugh. And this woman next to me, who I admire so much, is going through it too. And I had no idea because we just aren't talking about it. So I think it's so good to talk about it.
I think it is too. And I really think, as each stage of life that I personally go through too, I've, look back on postpartum. I look back on fertility. I look back on pregnancy. I look back to our teenage girls. I work with a decent amount of them and they're just so like, what is this? What am I doing? Like they're fearful of like leaking or just so many things. And I'm like, everybody else feels the same way.
Yeah. Yep.
Every other girl, every other woman feels these exact same things and we just don't talk about it. But I really felt the same way after I had my kids and like went to postpartum support groups. Like I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard, but also thank God there's some solidarity here. Like other people are waking up in the middle of the night and feel like a bus hit them too.
Yep.
At least I'm not alone.
Exactly. So let's dive in because you said physiology. I think that's a perfect segue. Let's talk a little bit of that, like anatomy, physiology, chemically, what is happening in our bodies. So first off, at the basic level, what are hormones? Like what actually are they in our body? Why do we need them?
So hormones are like little chemical messengers by the endocrine glands in our body. So they travel through the bloodstream to tissues and organs, delivering messages that tell our organs what to do and when to do it. So they're really, really crucial we think about them as like period infertility and like they're annoying during menopause, but they also are, they do everything for us: growth and development, metabolism, homeostasis, insulin, hunger hormones, thyroid hormones, obviously the reproductive hormones, mood regulation, like serotonin. So they really do everything for us. And I think that so many women, like, we don't notice our hormones. We don't think about them when they're doing a good job. We just don't even think about them. And then when you start to maybe feel a certain way or have certain symptoms, then we fight our hormones and we're like, oh, my hormones are in a wrong place or imbalanced or whatever. So, like I said, and I think that this is sort of a misconception on social media. There's a lot of people just talking about hormones, which is great, but there are like 50 different hormones. And so when you're hearing people talk about hormonal imbalance or hormones or fix your hormones, you really want to dive into like, which hormones are we talking about? Are we talking about, our thyroid, our insulin, our sex hormones, our stress hormones, like sleep wake cycle? All of it is dictated by hormones.
Yep. Okay. And then tell us the definition, if there is a definition, for perimenopause and menopause.
So perimenopause is actually defined as the 2 to 12 years before you go through menopause.
2 to 12, that's all. Just 2 to 12.
Somewhere in that range, I know. And so I have so many people that are like, oh my God, I think I'm starting perimenopause. Like it's like this scary thing, right? And I get it. It does feel scary. You're like, I feel like kind of young to be going through this, especially if you're in your like later 30s, kind of starting it. But really, I think how you can start to know if this is kind of where you're headed is just a change in period. So you might notice like shorter cycles, longer cycles, different PMS symptoms. So maybe like your breasts haven't been tender for 10 years and then you start getting breast tenderness again. Irritability or anxiety might peak a little bit before that period comes, or ovulation might feel different. It doesn't have to be like this severe thing. And there's actually this misconception. So I think we think of perimenopause obviously as leading into menopause, which is menopause is a point in time and it's just 1 year without a period.
Okay.
So then after that day, I guess, it would be your postmenopausal at that point, right? So perimenopause, I think we think of like, we know menopause is low estrogen, low progesterone, our hormones, our sex hormones get low. And so we assume that like perimenopause, they just sort of like linearly dive down, but it's a point of like really a lot of fluctuation.
Okay.
So actually what happens is we can kind of call perimenopause like our second puberty. Do you remember when you were a teenager and like you started your period for the first couple of years and it was like flooding and heavy and irregular and weird and clotty and your breasts hurt and all of those things? Then your endocrine system should kind of figure it out, like how much hormone, when, why, all of those things. And then we, can kind of start that process again where our brain is, so your brain always communicates with your ovaries, right? So the HPO, hypothalamus pituitary ovarian axis.
Okay.
And so in that sort of window of 2 to 12 years somewhere, your brain's kind of like, or your ovaries are kind of like, kind of like done doing this. We're going to slow things down. And so the communication from your brain to your ovaries gets a little weird again, like when you were a teenager. And so actually what happens for a lot of women, and again, there's some genetics to this, there's some lifestyle factors to this. And I want to talk about like that part because I think it's a huge piece of this. But some women will notice that like their periods go from 28 days to then like 26, 24, 22 days. They start getting a lot heavier. That is a sign of too much estrogen, actually. So we think about it as like this low estrogen and going on HRT right away and boosting that up. But if you did that, that would make it significantly worse. Right? You'd feel like pregnant. You'd be bleeding all the time. You'd be bloated, have headaches and nausea and things like that. And so you really want to just like, there are certain lifestyle factors or certain herbal supplements and things like that that we can use to help kind of regulate this big, huge fluctuation of estrogen. And then you start to get to this middle phase of perimenopause where then maybe you notice like, oh, every once in a while I'm going 40 days or 50 days. And then I'll have like a 20-day cycle again. And then it'll go 50 days again. And it's sort of like this back and forth. And that's your body just really fluctuating in estrogen from cycle to cycle. And then the last stage of perimenopause is I have a period, every 60 days and then 90 days. And then it's been 6 months since I've had a period. And eventually we get into that point that it has been a full year of no period.
And that, when I heard that second puberty, I don't know if anything made as much sense to me as that did. When I had read that, when you start your period, your estrogen, progesterone change, you ramp up, and then this is just the opposite. It's the second puberty. And that made so much sense to me of, okay, that makes sense why I feel foggy and confused and I cry out of nowhere. And then all of that. And then also for those of you listening, like I said, I had a hysterectomy at the age of early 40s, but I was still cycling and I kept one ovary. So I still cycle, but obviously I don't have a period. And so I know some of you out there will be like that, thinking the same thing of, oh my gosh, I have no idea. That's where it's just important to just try to listen. And even now, if you're in your 30s starting, just start to listen to what your body's telling you. Like, when do your cycles happen? What do you feel during that? And you'll kind of start to notice then when it's different. And it's normal, I think, to have a month different. You're stressed, you're traveling, whatever it is. It's really more over time, I would say, over a 6-month period. What's changing? How do you feel different? For me, my first symptoms, like I said, my prescription had been the same for years and years, and suddenly it changed so quickly. And then I put on 5 to 8 pounds. Again, that's not abnormal, but doing the same things I had always done didn't take it off. That's the part that was abnormal. Like those were my first two indications of, oh, something's up with my body. But then I thought it was just stress. I thought all of this until that light bulb moment of, I bet this is perimenopause. And then just remembering to talk to an expert like Ali, work with someone, and we'll talk about how to do that. Maybe this is a good segue, but there really are so many messages out there of, yes, take this one pill, do this one thing, or everyone says you need progesterone cream or you need this. But like Ali just said, if your hormones aren't the levels you think they are, like for me with endometriosis, they're not the same. They're not the same as everyone else's. So if I had done that one thing I saw on social media, I probably would have thrown myself into a much worse place. So for someone who's kind of ready for that or saying, okay, what do I do? Let's talk about that, I guess, first is if they can work with someone, what would be the ideal way to do that? Let's talk about the Dutch test a little bit. And
Yeah,
then maybe we'll segue into just some lifestyle things we can all work on to support our body during this time.
totally. Yeah. So I think the first thing that I think is really helpful, honestly, like for me as a practitioner, is to, and like I said, I can ask these questions too to kind of jog your memory, but it's important to like lay everything out there in terms of
Mm-hmm.
symptoms. So sometimes so with hormone testing, even like the Dutch test, it's a wonderful, wonderful test. I use it all the time. I really, really like it. But not everyone's a great candidate for it. Like if you're using an IUD, for example, or you have blood sugar dysregulation type of symptoms or thyroid symptoms, like there might be other panels that we want to look at. And so like I said, ask my patients, hunger, energy, cravings, mood, sleep, periods, energy, digestion, lifestyle, just head to toe every single thing
Yep.
about them so that I can get a pattern kind of laid out of like, okay, I think this is cortisol. I think this is insulin. I think that this
Okay.
is high estrogen, low progesterone, low testosterone. And then we can start to look at testing. I will be really honest, not every single woman, in my opinion, needs to do hormone testing. Sometimes it is so textbook obvious of what's going on that we just need to support cortisol. If you're not sleeping, you're exhausted all the time, you're really, really under a lot of stress, you're really anxious. Like the questions you can ask are
Yeah.
fairly obvious for that.
Okay.
Um, and I always work with people like how they want to be worked with, to be honest. I obviously give my opinion and say like, hey, we really need to look at these numbers. I'm very conservative in that way. But like I said, I don't require like a prerequisite to do testing
Mhm.
necessarily.
Okay.
With that said, the Dutch test is really, really helpful to figure out your sex hormones. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, which is a precursor hormone. It also looks at your cortisol pattern. So cortisol is part of our sleep wake cycle. It's lower in the morning, peaks up, gets lower at night. And so some people with energy, sleep, mood issues will have irregularities in that, and that's helpful to look at sometimes. The Dutch test also looks at how you're metabolizing hormones. And so sometimes where we can get confused is there's a few places. So on a normal like blood test, right? You can go do your estrogen and progesterone about 5 to 7 days post ovulation if you're cycling, or if in your case you just want to check for ovulation to see when that
Mhm.
was. And we can look at the numbers. And for a lot of my patients, the numbers come back in normal range. And they're like, well, I'm still miserable. And these numbers came back fine. So then the question is, okay, well, let's do a further calculation and see
Mhm.
where your ratio of estrogen to progesterone is. So sometimes estrogen looks normal, progesterone, but if you look at them, progesterone should be opposing estrogen. And so that ratio is off, which creates something called estrogen dominance. The other aspect of that, even if that's in normal range, is that hormones, like I mentioned, they're little chemical messengers. They go do their job. And then after they go do their job, they don't just like disintegrate or evaporate. They have to go through little detox pathways in your
Mhm.
liver, out your bowel movements. And so for people who are constipated, not having regular BMs, that can be an issue and
Mhm.
cause more like hormonal, basically like backing up, like a
Yep.
traffic jam. Also, our liver is just really, really overburdened from all the environmental toxins, alcohol,
Yeah.
plastics, pollutants, foods, chemicals, hormones. If we're stressed, it can slow down the process of detoxing. It can also cause nutrient deficiencies in things like magnesium or B vitamins or choline, which are little cofactors for liver detox. And so sometimes it's one of those things where your hormone levels are actually okay, but there's just this like traffic jam and nothing's getting out, and it can get you to feel bloated, puffy, just before you start your period, that like stuck feeling where you're just like, I just need to flow. Like if I can just start flowing, I'll feel better. Even like emotionally, like irritability, rage. That's a good sign that like we need to move your liver along a little bit, and we can do some things for that. But the Dutch test actually looks at that.
Right.
So
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So just to clarify for everyone, so the Dutch test is something I did. It's something you would work with someone like a hormone expert like Ali, and you can do this virtually. Like I said, Ali and I've never met in person. It's been virtually. So you can work with someone. They would order it for you. It comes to your house. It's a bunch of little sticks and you pee on them throughout the day. And then you send it into a company and they read it. And so that's it. It's not blood work or anything. You're peeing on these sticks and they'll read it. They send the results back to the expert you're working with, who then will make a recommended plan of specific supplements and lifestyle things that you can do. It is a financial cost. I will say that insurance doesn't cover it. It's that deeper dive if you have access to it. I have done it twice now. It's been really, really informative to me. But also you can start with your doctor and blood work. Like I remember, Ali, that was one of the first things you said to me was, if you have blood work already from insurance or from your doctor, send that over. Let me look at that first.
Yeah.
And so don't let cost be an inhibitor, but please also know that blood work, what Ali's saying is blood work isn't the whole story. That's the thing that happens is sometimes your PCP or your OB will say, well, we did your panel, you're fine. And the panel maybe will check 5 out of these 100 things they could check. And then like Ali said, the levels could say normal, in air quotes, I'm doing air quotes. It could say normal, but it's not giving you the whole story. So maybe start with blood work if that feels accessible to you, but also don't feel if they come back and say, it's normal, you're fine, it's something else. That might not be the whole story. You might have more information that you can get and more things that you can do. Is that an accurate summary?
Yeah, no, I love that. Yes. And I think that is a big value. I know that you talk about this in your Instagram and stuff in your business, but accessibility is a huge value of mine in my own practice. Yeah. I know that functional medicine is just, when you look at costs of things, it's just exorbitant. And I know that that's a big hindrance to a lot of women. And so that's why I say, like, if you can't afford testing, like, let's start somewhere. We can absolutely do that. And I think even to your point with blood work, like, even if it looks normal and there's nothing going on, we can certainly read between some lines sometimes. And just like I said, I like to treat the patient, not just the lab all the time too. And so, yes, there's a lot of options between nothing and like something like the Dutch test. But the Dutch test is a really, really amazing test. It looks at neurotransmitters. It looks at a gut health marker now. It looks at your B vitamins, melatonin. It looks at a lot of different things that will give you a really great picture. And I really actually love it. I have to just say this. If you are on HRT, it's really, really great because then you can see how your body's metabolizing the HRT, which makes it safer.
So that is actually a perfect segue now also. Let's talk about HRT. I have people ask me about it all the time. Just so you all know, for context, I'm not on it. I've never, I've never been on it. I have had a hysterectomy. I have 1 ovary. I've had breast cancer. So I'm probably not even a candidate now for it whatsoever. But even with that, my oncologist said if my levels were a certain amount, she would talk to me and possibly approve it. So just so you know, there's a lot of there's a lot of misinformation probably around HRT and a lot of floating things out there. So why don't you tell us just a general picture of either what you feel about it, who's a candidate, who might not be? Tell us what we need to know.
Totally. So I want to just remind you first, I actually saw this on Instagram written out, and it was like just a really great thing about it. So HRT, we tend to think about it as estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, but we also use HRT in insulin. We use HRT in thyroid hormones. And so it's not just like HRT is basically hormone replacement therapy for things that our bodies don't make anymore. Okay. So there's a lot of different ones. With the sex hormone HRT, it's a really, really nuanced conversation. And I will say, I've been practicing women's health for 15 years, and it has changed. I can't even
Yeah.
tell you how significantly in that time. I used to really try to use like herbs and like really keep people off HRT in like the early days of my practice.
Mhm.
And I will say, even in like the last couple years, there's a lot of conversations around. So there was a study that showed how unsafe it was. It caused cancer. No one should do it. And so everyone stopped. And
Yeah.
now we're realizing, I would say in the last couple of years, that was actually
Mhm.
not a great study. And HRT can actually be very beneficial to
Mhm.
women as we age. And I'll kind of talk about the nuances. But I don't think that there's never going to be a blanket. Everyone should or shouldn't. Like, I am not
Yep.
a candidate either. I have a blood clotting disorder where my blood overclots. And so estrogen is off the table for me as well,
Mhm.
birth control and HRT. So I won't use it either.
Yep.
But so I think you have to look at like your family history, genetics, your own medical history. And to your point, they are starting to figure out that like even women with a history of cancer and things like that can actually start to use it. I
Mhm.
don't know that we're necessarily there with people prescribing it quite yet
Yeah.
there, but it's really close.
Yep.
And I also think that I know there's research in estrogen specifically that they're coming out with one that just goes to our brain and doesn't go systemically in
Oh,
our
wow.
body, which is amazing because part of
Mhm.
the sort of issue with low estrogen is in our menopause era, when we are low in estrogen, we start to notice insulin resistance,
Mhm.
hyperlipidemia, which is high cholesterol levels. We start to notice more heart disease. We start to notice bone density loss, like osteoporosis and osteopenia. And we start to notice an increase in cognitive decline with Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, our life expectancy is a lot longer. And so the average age of menopause is 51 years old. And we go, a lot of decades without that estrogen that can be really, really helpful for all those conditions that I
Yes.
mentioned. And so I think, they're finding that it is like life-saving in some capacities to use it. And so it's a really nuanced conversation. Like I said,
Yeah.
I can't take it either at this point. So I think that there are also lifestyle things to do for it, but I don't think that it is like this good/bad.
Yep.
I think there's like this spectrum of it of like doing it safely. I have seen people do great on HRT
Mhm.
and really love it. I have seen absolute horror stories with other practitioners of like giving way too much estrogen. Their testosterone levels are through the roof. They've like grown beards and things like
Yep.
that. They don't use progesterone with estrogen HRT, which is an absolute must.
Mhm.
So you really want to go to someone who does this as a living, like
Yep.
not just pretends to or sort of knows something like this is what they do. And
Mhm.
you also want to go to somebody who will give you alternatives, who's not just, it's a very opportunistic business. I will say
Yeah.
that. And will test you regularly,
Yep.
right? So we want to get levels tested before we go on it and if you do pellets or something every 3 months, like each and every time so
Yep.
that we know what those levels are looking like. And we'll also listen to you. I've had quite a few patients that like say, I don't want estrogen. I'm getting migraines from this, or I'm feeling really bloated, or I'm feeling certain ways. And their provider just puts it in the pellet still and
Right.
like won't listen. And so,
Yep.
I think I'm not opposed or for necessarily. I do
Yep.
think there is very compelling evidence coming for it, to be
Right.
honest.
Yep.
But it's not for everybody, like you
Yep.
said.
And like everything else, you have to be an advocate for yourself. I'm sure is what it comes down to is find someone who's going to listen to you, who's going to work with you. And also on the flip side, I don't know at this point if I would work with someone who had the opposite effect of that they, big red X, no, I never will look at HRT. I'm not even open to it because there is a lot of research right now that is, like Ali said, compelling to some benefits of it. So just know it is nuanced. It's a gray area. You have to do what's right for you and find someone to work with who is going to listen to you and let you use your voice. I mean, that's the most important thing, and be willing to change. If it's working for 6 months and then it's not, you change it. It's not all or nothing. You can always change it up.
Mhm. Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you. That was really helpful. I know people ask
Mhm.
about that a lot.
Yeah.
So let's talk about any common myths or misconceptions that you see around this whole area: hormones, menopause, perimenopause, maybe a few you can throw out there because I'm sure some of us
Oh my
have
gosh,
those
there's so
too.
many.
I know.
Okay, so one, I guess while we're on the topic of HRT, like I said, in our early era of perimenopause, when you're having things like worsening PMS symptoms, heavier periods, shorter cycles, bloating, water retention, breast tenderness, like do not add estrogen to that.
Okay.
HRT, a lot of people will like, well, I've heard all this about HRT and perimenopause. Fantastic. Like we said, we just talked about that compelling evidence, but you got to wait until you actually need it. In
Okay.
my opinion, like when your hormones are, specifically estrogen is up and down all the time, I would wait until it's a little bit more stable of like low to add that HRT in at that point, because I think you're going to feel real miserable if you don't do that. So I think that's a big one. And I also think that the other myth around this is that your estrogen's actually low. And like I said, it's in the early stages of perimenopause, it's actually high.
Okay.
So we want to work on detoxing and, we can talk about some lifestyle things, but we want to work on like detoxing the estrogen and supporting progesterone versus adding estrogen.
Okay. Awesome.
So that's one. I think another big one is just that like you got to like live through it. You know what I mean? Like you have to suffer and be miserable. And just because your mom, 30 years ago was miserable and hot for 10 years and all of these things, that you have to do the same thing and there's nothing that can be done. I think even HRT conversation aside, and I wanted to kind of bring this up, like don't pick up pennies or don't skip over dollars to pick up pennies. You know what I mean? Like lifestyle stuff absolutely matters. We have to be doing all the right things, at least some of the right things to kind of get our stress hormones and our insulin and blood sugar in a great place. And that makes a world of difference in terms of how your periods, energy, mood, sleep, digestion, hot flashes, night sweats, anxiety, all of that looks. And so I want to that's like one of my biggest messages is that you don't have to settle for this.
Yes. And then, so why don't we go to, because that's a great point, like go to your low hanging fruit. Like maybe you don't have to jump to the Dutch test first. Maybe you don't have to jump to HRT, definitely. But so what are some things that all of us could do starting today? Like a few doable, very accessible things that across the board might help us just get into our system, clean it up a little bit, let it settle, let our nervous system settle so that then we can see where we're at.
So I think some really quick tips would be, number one, like eating protein. I think that a lot of us either skip breakfast, go straight to caffeine, or eat, toast or something like that for breakfast. And in my opinion, when we wake up, especially if you are under stress or pressure, you're really busy and you're tired, if we can just start the day on like a really great foundation and set the stage for your body in terms of stable cortisol, which is our stress hormone in our sleep wake cycle, and your insulin, I think that makes a world of difference. So if we could maybe like, the topic of fasting and eating intervals always comes up. You don't have to like eat within 30 minutes or go 16 hours without food. Like that's sort of the extremes. I think just simply listening to your body, like when do you feel hungry? Don't wait to the point that you're ravenous and really jittery and like have to have food now. Just kind of like when you get up and get around, get some food in you. It can be as simple as like a protein smoothie if that's palatable for you, or it could be, some eggs, it could be some Greek yogurt, it could be, there's all kinds of like protein granolas, even just something that has some protein to it. That's going to be I didn't always do this in my life. I've started in the last several years doing it, but once you do it consistently for a while and then you kind of don't for a day, you're like, oh, wow, like it's a huge difference in how you feel. So I think that's a really great one. I also think getting fiber, right? So fiber helps those bowel movements that we talked about as important, but it also feeds your gut microbiome, which is all those little trillions of bacteria that live in your gut. It also slows down the digestive process. It helps stabilize your insulin. So fiber is really, really helpful. And it can look as simple. I know fiber sometimes is a little intimidating. It can look like as simple as grabbing a handful of blueberries with your breakfast, or grabbing an apple with lunch, or putting some green spinach in your smoothie, or grabbing some quinoa or flaxseed and putting it on some oatmeal. Like it doesn't have to be you chopping vegetables and figuring it out. I know that that's sort of a learning curve for a lot of people. And to be really honest, I'm not fantastic at it either. I don't enjoy spending my day in the kitchen. I do things that are quick and easy. So I think those two things, protein, fiber,
Okay.
and then if you want a little third one for my framework, I do a little healthy fat.
Okay.
And that framework for food in regular intervals of eating makes a world of difference in how you feel on a daily basis.
Awesome. And then what about, because everyone listening knows one of my favorite topics and things is walking. And I know
Yeah.
one of your favorite topics is walking. So tell us about that. Tell us about the power of walking, the benefits of walking, and how it works into this framework also.
Oh my gosh, walking is just the best. So I first like to kind of give the analogy of our bodies primarily made of water, right? And if you think about a little tiny pond that has no flushing, like no running water to it, it's just stagnant there.
Yeah.
After a little bit of time, not that long, it starts to get really moldy and murky and yucky, and you need some flowing water to it. And so that's what our body is like too. And so I always say, like, we need to get our lymphatic system moving. Our gut bacteria love walking. It produces something called short chain fatty acids. Our brain loves walking. Our heart, our blood circulation, like our kidneys, every single like detox, flushing fluid loves walking. In addition to our neurotransmitters, our heart health, our muscular skeletal system, bone density, like walking is so underrated. We think we have to
Yep.
do these like formal workouts, but
Mhm.
walking does literally everything for you.
Yep. Yes.
So if you can get, and there's a lot of research on this too. It's always kind of funny that we need like the actual data for these things,
Yeah.
but we do. And you know, the data is different depending on like what one you're looking at, but the research shows between 7 to 10,000 steps like does, I think it decreases, I will get the numbers wrong, but like decreases your risk of premature death by like a huge percentage.
Yeah.
Heart disease, certain kinds of
Mhm.
cancers, blood sugar and metabolic disease, like all of these things. And some of it actually stops at 10,000 steps. And some of the benefits just continue to get better as you just get more
Mhm.
steps even after the 10,000.
Yep.
So I always tell my patients that if walking is not something that you do, if even if you like, you know, I used to be a person that just did a formal like workout and then like
Yep.
sat around and never thought about it again for the day.
Yep.
So if that's you, or if you're just sedentary right now, no shame at all, but start somewhere. So
Yep.
if you have your iPhone, look at the health app, or you wear like a watch or something, look at what your average steps are. And if it's 3 or 4,000, try to get 6 or 7 on
Yep.
average. If it's 6 or 7, maybe we want to push it to 8 or 9,000
Mhm.
steps. And again, remember with all of these things, the nutrition, the exercise, it's all an average over time. Our body
Mhm.
doesn't just reset every 24 hours. It
Yep.
averages out of days, weeks, and months. So
Yeah.
I always just kind of do like an average. If you're really sedentary during the week, like maybe we go on a longer walk on the weekends and try to
Mhm.
just increase it just a little bit during the week.
Yep. And I 100% believe that increasing my walking and steps was probably the best thing, the thing
Yeah.
that helped me the most, actually. In
Yeah.
addition to just the information about my hormones, when I just added walking, and it's exactly what you said. I was the same that, I mean, I would have my 45-minute workout, but I would sit in front of the computer, get up and do that workout, come back and sit.
Yeah.
And so I didn't replace it. So all of you, just so you know, if you follow Ali, you'll also hear her talk about the benefits of lifting weights. So both, we need all of it. But
Yes.
just the added movement during the day, when I would walk more to the car, I would walk down and get fresh air at the same time. I would get sunlight at the same time, which is going to help testosterone and things that you need. There's so many benefits to it. So don't necessarily feel like, oh, I have to replace other workouts, but just see where you might be able to add the walking. I mean, again, I've seen you, Ali, like when you drop your kids off at sporting events and practice, you will stay and walk around the school to get your
Mhm.
steps in. I mean, that's how it works sometimes, guys.
Yeah.
We have to be creative, and it doesn't have to look like a workout. You don't have to have your workout clothes on. You don't have to have your tennis shoes on even to walk. Wherever you are, see if you can just get some added steps in.
Yeah, I think because I know that, you know, when a lot of my patients are like, oh, I don't have time to get like a 30-minute walk in addition to the workout. But I'm like, well,
Yep.
look for like the next best thing, right? So if
Yeah.
you're sitting at the kids' sports practices, like stand, and then maybe you could like pace back and forth a little bit. And yes, I'm sure I look like a weirdo to 95% of people out there because they're all sitting in their lawn chairs and I'm like the one that's just like walking around. But it just, now I've become like kind of like the protein thing. And I think you probably agree, like kind of I feel so gross and weird if I don't do it. Like it feels just like I flushed things through. It's mental
Mhm.
health. I breathe deeper and I've made it like my self-care. Truly. I
Yeah.
listen to like really great music and I just zone out and it
Mhm.
gets sunlight and it has become my self-care for sure.
Yep. Yep. And I'm the same. And just know, everybody, sometimes this takes time. It takes time to develop habits and see what habits work for you. So, like Ali said, I mean, maybe changing protein throughout the day, eat something good when you wake up, add steps throughout the day. I mean, those are some
Mhm.
things we could all start doing right away. And then you build on it. A few months later, you check in with yourself. How are you feeling? How are you doing? Then you add. Don't
Mhm.
get information overload because you'll feel like there's 50 things you can do at once. And that's too much. Your brain will shut down. So
Yeah.
pick a few. Pick a few, try them for a few months, and then change it up as needed.
Totally. Just,
And
yep.
so, what, as we kind of start to wrap up, because there are 1,000 things that we could talk about, and we could talk about for hours around this. And so, everyone listening, Ali is going to be in my unlimited community in May for a deeper dive, answering all of your information, answering all of your personal questions. So, I'll have the link below if you want to sign up for unlimited. And also, we'll have all of Ali's contact information below as well. But to kind of, are there any just a couple kind of overall overarching things to help women out there feel educated, to feel encouraged as they move forward? Any other messages that you want to kind of put out there?
Yeah. Like, I think just to summarize, I think that, I understand also why women don't seek help for this. Like, there's so many messages of like, oh my God, you don't have to feel like this. Just stop feeling like this. But I get it. Like, we're busy, it's expensive. We don't want to take time to go to the doctor or even figure it out. I totally understand that. I feel the same in certain aspects of my own life. So I get that 100%. But I think I try really hard in my practice to make it simplified, convenient, like get people going in a way that's not super burdensome financially and time and just mental load, right? So I know
Mhm.
that sometimes you walk away from these appointments and you're like, okay, so I got to do this 12-step routine. I got to get steps. I got to get the protein. I got to do the supplements. And it is too much when our plates are already so full. And so I just think that, you know, to our point, to summarize, there's so many things that you can do,
Mhm.
easy things that just are little tiny tweaks that will make a world of difference in how you feel and get through this phase. And so I really try to really ease the overwhelm with it because it doesn't need to be
Right. And we're already so overwhelmed.
so
And so
overwhelmed.
just, yes, so overwhelmed.
Yes.
So, yeah, remember, you are not alone.
Yeah.
Grab a couple tips from today, start with those, come back and listen to this again in a couple weeks. And
Mhm.
it's one step at a time, one step at a time.
Yep.
And actually, Ali, tell everyone about this amazing quiz that you have, actually, that they can take. And
Yeah.
guys, I'll have the link for this below too.
So when I remember earlier when I talked about like how there's 50 different hormones, I
Yeah.
have a short quiz. It's a couple questions talking about just like symptoms that you can fill out to figure out like what hormone is the problem. Because I think we just are
Okay.
like, well, my hormones are a problem, but we don't know which one. So this is a short quiz with 3 different areas on there that can kind of give you a little direction. And then it has some specific action tips for that specific hormone. So cortisol, insulin, estrogen, etc. And you can
That's awesome.
figure out like where might be a great place to start.
Yep, that's awesome. So that'll be so helpful. So I'll have that link below. And then tell everyone how they can find you.
Yeah, totally. So Instagram's a great place. It's my name, Ali Damron. You can DM me if you have questions, things like that. I have a podcast called The Ali Damron Show. I have YouTube as well. Same Ali Damron. I have Facebook group. I have a website. So pretty much everywhere that you would go is just my name. It's Ali
Yep.
Damron. So if you Google that too, that works.
Awesome. And we'll have that below. And thank you so much for, again, this is just the tip of the iceberg, I know, but you guys know what we want you to feel. We want you to feel empowered. We want you to feel educated. We want you to be an advocate for yourself so that you can ask the right questions and take that next right step for you. So hopefully today did that a little bit. And Ali, thank you so much. I am so grateful. And we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't that so good? I just wanted to keep picking her brain about so many different topics. And I am so glad that we were able to at least bring some of this to light because it really affects all of us. It truly does. And I feel like it's a topic that's been kind of swept under the rug for so long. And let's bring it out. Let's bring it out into the light. Let's talk about it. Let's find some hope. Let's find some encouragement. Let's find some real tools that we can use so we can feel empowered during this time. So remember, check out the links below. You'll see where you can find Ali, and definitely join us in Unlimited for that deeper dive all about hormone health in May 2024. We'll have workouts. I have a recipe based on what Ali talked about today, actually. And then we'll have that Q&A specifically with her. So I'll have those links below. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining me today on Meet Your Body. If you have a moment, please consider rating and reviewing this podcast as it helps us tremendously. For more resources and workouts, you can visit my website, jessicavallantpilates.com, or find me on YouTube or Instagram at Jessica Vallant Pilates.